Hey friends, it's Abigail Luvisi. Welcome back to Judgment Free Zone. We need vulnerability and empathy now more than ever. I hope you are able to find room for more curiosity, self-compassion, and empathy for yourself and others while you're here. I show up so you can too.
Hello guys. This is Hannah with Untying the Knot.
And this is Abigail with Judgment Free Zone.
We are doing a joint podcast because this is a fun, not a fun topic, but like a good topic for both of our podcasts.
Yeah.
So we are going to be chatting about blended families and blending your families together. This is something I realized that on Untying the Knot, we have not talked about this at all. We've talked a lot about single motherhood and the divorce process or being a divorcee, but we haven't talked about bringing families together.
And I've done all of that.
Yeah. And I'm a child of a blended family.
Yeah.
And Britt obviously is getting remarried, but Ryan doesn't have kids. So, we haven't had this perspective yet on Untying the Knot, on like what it's like to be the parent, be the adult trying to do this and manage this and help everyone and going through the struggles. Because for me as a kid, I was so young when our families blended that like I never really felt, it didn't really ever feel all that hard because I was so young. Like I don't really even remember a life before my dad and brother, who were technically my stepdad and stepbrother, which I was with them forever. Like it just doesn't even feel like a step family, but technically that's what it was. So anywho, I thought, I guess just kind of from your perspective, Abby, as you know, it's weird to think that like Daniel is the girl's stepdad. Like I've just always thought he's just Daniel. Like he's just the dad at the house. Like I've never thought of the step family for you guys either.
You got to remember, I was a step parent with my ex-husband too.
Yeah. Yeah. I know. I don't know why I forgot about that, but I did.
Yeah, well, I was so young. and shouldn't have been a step parent at that point. But yeah, he had a daughter, and so
Yeah.
I feel like I grew a lot from that. Like looking back
Yeah.
now, I again like shouldn't have been in that position to begin with. It was not something, no, like so many things. But that was really hard that young. I
Yeah.
was a senior in high school and he had, a 4-month old.
Wow.
And again, all red flags. I get it, guys. Okay. So I'm here. I'm here. I see it. And we're just gonna drive by. Okay. So like, but no, it was you're dealing with, baby mamas are rough in general. Like I get it. We like are protectors of our children.
Yeah.
I think that in so many ways we are hurting those relationships. And at the end of the day, we're hurting the kids. Um,
Yeah.
and it's really unfortunate. Like we all got our own stuff. We need to work on our own stuff so that we can, change what's happening.
Yeah.
And, again, I was so young with that first one that you got to think about like a 17-year-old mom dealing with a 17-year-old stepmom and
Yeah.
a 19-year-old. Well, she was probably 18 and my ex was 19, like teenagers dealing
Teenagers.
with things that,
Co-parenting.
yeah, that they should not be dealing with. And that was really difficult. Like I wasn't given the opportunity to love this child who needed to be loved, and
Yeah.
there was so much heartache in that situation for
Yeah.
everyone involved. My
Yeah.
ex,
So
her,
you really
me.
have the experience of what not to do
Oh
and
yeah.
what to do.
Yeah, yeah, and even still, like, of course it's hard, but the thing is my bonus daughter that I have now in the blended family, I mean, that relationship is completely different
Yeah.
than what that relationship when I first was a step parent
Yeah.
was. And again, like that comes with age and a lot of therapy and emotional
Yeah.
maturity in general.
Yeah.
Could our relationship be better? Of course. Unfortunately, again, we as parents really do play a huge, huge role in how that relationship is. And
Yeah.
unfortunately, more parents than not are not allowing the step parent to be what they need in their life. And then
Yeah.
also the step parent again is, you know, there I see so many, even with the woman that like my ex is with now, how much she is triggered by things and she probably doesn't
Yeah.
even realize it, and that is hurting the kids. And they
Yeah.
don't deserve any of this to begin with. Like we need to
It's
work
not
on our
their,
stuff.
yeah.
It's yeah, hard.
Well, it's, and the other thing too is it's hard enough with, you know, even emotionally stable people or emotionally healthy people, let alone when there are people in the picture that, you know, don't know how to communicate or communicate well, at least. And all of it just adds like all these layers that you have to check in with yourself and evaluate. I know when, so I obviously Amberly has had two stepmoms now, and I was 20, I think, when she had the first one. And I remember she started calling her mom, and Amberly was 18 months old at the time. And I was pissed. Like, I remember
Mm-hmm.
being so mad because I remember thinking, how does she know to call her mom? Like, because, you know, they said that she just started saying it, which, you know, who knows what actually happened. But I remember being really, really, really pissed that that happened. And then I think it was actually one of the teen moms that said it from the Teen Mom Show, said something about like with the stepmom, like even though it's hard to know that someone else is like in your place essentially when they're at the other parent's house, like don't you want your kids to have a safe motherly figure that they can go to when you're not there? And I heard her say that and I was like, oh my gosh, yes. Like
Mm-hmm.
even though it's hard to like accept that now there's another woman who is a you know, a motherly figure, a mom figure, like at the end of the day I do want Amberly to have that comfort, you know, and she's closer to her stepmoms now than her dad.
Right.
And that was really hard to embrace and accept and, you know, work through at 20, 21 years old, especially when all the pain from my ex was so fresh. But I knew that what was best for Amberly was to not feel like she couldn't accept her stepmom, you know?
Well,
Like if she felt like that I was resentful towards her, I didn't want her to have a bad relationship with her because I didn't want her to go over to her dad's house and, you know, despise her stepmom.
right. Well,
So,
again, kids don't have the logic that we do as
yeah.
adults, and they are complete emotion based. They, you know, they just want to feel loved. It doesn't
Yeah.
matter who it is, step parent, grandma, grandpa, friend, mom, dad. Like it
Yeah.
doesn't matter how you're going to react to things is going to either create shame or create love. And
Yeah.
they don't see, oh, this person is treating me poorly, or this person is not really my mom or not really my dad. They see how you treat them, and that's literally showing them where their place is for love and belonging.
Yeah.
You play a huge role and impact on those little minds. And it's really unfortunate what can happen. And I mean, it's, I take my job as that very seriously,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. So what would I guess what are some things you've learned over the years that you could inspire the listeners to
I mean,
embrace?
again, that like do go work on yourself. Like if you're I mean, if you're in a blended family, like
What do you
Yeah.
think I guess what do you think some differences are between what you did the first time and what you did? Obviously, I mean, you said therapy and working on yourself, but like what does that look like for people who don't know what that means?
I mean,
Because
again,
on
it's
your podcast, you talk about it a lot, but we haven't talked about that kind of work as much on Untying the Knot. So, yeah.
I it's hard because again, you and I both were so young
Yeah.
that like it's a totally different viewpoint. So it's
That's
hard to
true.
say, it's hard to like compare what like I do differently because like to me everything is different. You know,
Yeah.
I was in a very unhealthy relationship to begin with. There
Yeah.
was nothing about it that was right and okay. So, you know, again, like going to therapy and learning to trust myself and learning to love myself. For me, you can only love somebody as much as you love yourself. Like,
Yeah.
period. Like,
Yeah.
so how you treat yourself and pour into yourself is how you're going to be able to show up for others. And so that's what I would say, like, is the biggest thing that I've learned. I was a child who didn't already feel loved, who was searching for love. So I'm looking to put myself into others. So how can I expect a child to love me when I didn't even love I wasn't giving them love either. Like, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like so now I've done the work to know my own worth and I'm able to show them their worth now. You know,
Yeah.
so that's a huge difference from the first time to this time. And you know, I think in general giving yourself so much self-compassion, like at the end of the day, like my past, like I played a role in it and I didn't know what I was doing, but I know that I hurt her. There's
Yeah.
no way that I didn't affect her upbringing. You are and
Yeah.
that she's going to have to process that and deal with that. And that sucks to know. It sucks to know that I was probably the villain in somebody's story. And I have to one own that and I totally will if she ever came to me one day and said like, "Dude, this blew. Like
Yeah.
this sucked," you know, and just to sit in that and it's uncomfortable and you don't want to. Unfortunately, if you want to heal, like we have to sit in it and I know that that might be the story that she has of me and
Yeah.
just giving myself that self-compassion of knowing where I was and knowing that I didn't stay there though. And that's
Yeah.
where I can grow and heal and know that that's not who I am and that's not who I was. It just was
Yeah.
unfortunate.
Well,
Does
and
that
you
make
didn't,
sense?
yeah, totally. You didn't have the emotional awareness. You
Right.
didn't have the tools to recognize when you were being triggered or when,
Yeah.
sorry guys, I'm readjusting here, or when, um, I forgot the the track I was going down, but you just didn't have the tools that you had the second time. I guess
Yeah.
that's kind of what it comes down to. And you get those by going to therapy.
Yeah.
And I know therapy can be, I thought about actually having a therapy episode at some point because therapy has been for some people it's more accessible than any other time right now, and for other people it's really difficult to find a good therapist,
Well,
which
I
has
think
been
it's difficult in general to find a good therapist, whether it's accessible or not.
that's true. That's actually very true. And you know, when there's things that you want to work on and when because therapy is just gonna it's gonna benefit yourself, like your relationship with yourself and the relationships with everyone around you. um it's worth it to keep trying to find the therapist that's good for you. That's just a random side note
Yeah.
because because that's I know that's such a huge part of your journey is going to therapy and
Hmm.
actually actually putting the effort into it because people can go to therapy and just say that they're going, but if you're not really making the effort and not really um being honest with yourself and with your therapist, then it's hard to actually have the change.
Yeah. a thought I was thinking about, like with blended families too, is just
Yes.
the I would just say that like when you do notice yourself getting triggered with what the kids that you're, being the parent to in that role, that step parent role, is just be curious about what's really happening. Cause again, it's really about ourselves.
Yeah.
And that's why I keep saying, like, you can't love until, or have that, show that love and self-worth until you feel that for yourself. Cause whatever's triggering you, like that's the story you're creating, which probably isn't what they're trying to do or create.
That was what I was thinking when I was readjusting and I lost my train of thought. I was thinking that you always say stay curious, and that's something that I've taken in my life is like when I get irritated or when I feel triggered about something, I immediately start asking myself like where is this coming from? Like why is this bothering me? Like what is unhealed within me, that like what is this exposing right now?
Mm-hmm.
And that's also something that you learn in therapy is to how to address those shadows,
Mm-hmm.
and the shame shadows and all the different shame, what are they called?
I call them the shame shadows. Yeah,
Oh,
they're
okay.
the shame shadows. Yeah.
Oh
So,
yeah, there you go.
and how they play roles in our life. I mean, it again goes back. I mean, there's a ton of stuff like it's just gonna go off on a tangent. I mean, it's our shame shadows, but they're all based off of our attachment wounds.
Yeah.
So abuse, neglect, betrayal, abandonment, I'm missing something. There's six.
Re- Rejection,
Yeah, thank
right?
you.
Isn't that one?
Yeah. I don't know which ones I named yet.
I can't
Anyways,
remember.
but there's all of
Neglect.
those betrayal. I think I said that. Anyways,
Oh.
but you have everybody has attachment wounds from our past. So we have attachment wounds. We create a story around them and they create core beliefs on our hearts. And then we have these shame shadows that play a role in it. They're basically, the shame shadows are showing evidence. They're constantly looking for evidence to prove why you have these core beliefs about yourself. So,
And when the people around you do something, especially the kids, when they do something, it triggers those shame shadows.
oh, kids are walking triggers for you. Literally. Like, I think it's so, I don't even know the word. Like when people think that having a kid is helpful in marriages, like I don't know why I felt like I saw that growing up. Like,
Asinine.
didn't you see that? Yeah.
Totally. So many
Yeah.
people that like all of our problems would be fixed if we just have a kid because
And
it will
I'm like,
bond over the kid.
oh my God. Like, no.
No,
Seriously, no. Like, no,
no,
no, no.
no. Well, and I know
No.
that's part of why like I've talked about inner child work and inner child healing
Oh
too
yeah.
on Untying the Knot. Like that's a huge part over the last maybe year or so. Like I've been working on healing my inner child so much, and it's allowed me to parent Amberly in a totally new way.
Yeah.
Like I look back on, years ago, like different things that would happen and how I would react to something or what she would say about something. And now like I can see the those wounds. I can see the things that were hurting me, and now I handle it totally differently. And
Right.
that's you know that's fairly recent, like within the last year. And I remember at first, when I first like realized it, I remember thinking like, oh my gosh, I wish I would have started doing this when she was a baby. Because that's what I thought at the beginning. And now I'm like, you know what? It's better now than never, right? Like it's better that I figured it out eventually.
Well, the
And
thing is your kids are going to have pain no matter what.
what? Yeah. I remember when you told me that too. Like, Amberly's gonna have trauma. It's probably gonna be from you, and and we'll help her through it. And I'm like, okay, yes,
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we all do. And, we want to protect our kids from all of these scenarios, but we can't have that. We can't have joy without the pain.
yeah,
And
yeah.
I
That
know
was
I've talked about that a bajillion times. And again, I know it's way easier said than done because I want to protect my kids too.
yeah,
And that's ultimately where I think those, stepmom like things, those shadows come in and the triggers pop up, is because we want to protect our babies. And so we
yeah,
get all mama bear, but who is it really protecting?
yeah. Yeah.
Again, like, what is it really doing? And that's why we need to stay curious about it, is if we're trying to protect, if we're really trying to protect and show up, and this person who is step parenting is really evil, then we show them boundaries and we
Yeah.
teach them how to handle unhealthy people. Because at the end of the day, I've looked, okay, this is another thing that, like, I feel like I've really learned is, at the end of the day, I'm given the opportunity to teach my kids in these moments how to handle themselves in my home before they leave. And as
Yeah.
much as it sucks having divorced parents, and as much as it sucks having to deal with all of these peoples and situations and scenarios, what a blessing it is for me to be able to have those situations in my home now,
Yeah.
and looking at it as a blessing rather than this sucks,
Yeah.
because we are all going to deal with people who suck.
Yeah.
And
So at least they can learn it now and have these lessons for their whole life. Like they can learn how to
exactly.
handle these things now instead
Yes.
of when they're, 30 trying to deal with it.
Right. I mean, well, they still will, but
Well, no, they still will, but I
yeah.
mean trying to learn it that late in life, well, not
Yes.
not that it's late, but later
Right.
on in
And of
life.
course, I'm not saying like being a shitty step parent is like what I want everyone to have,
Right.
or like that you're teaching them a lesson by being shitty. Like, no, go do your work. Like I said, they don't, you know, they don't deserve that. Like they didn't do
Yeah.
anything. They didn't ask for this. I'm just saying, with what I have been given and what my kids do have, I am using it to the best that I can rather than not seeing it that way.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a great perspective to have.
Yeah.
Okay, something else I thought
Mm,
that I don't know that we have ever talked about this very much,
mm.
but I feel like maybe you mentioned it. Anyway, did you at any time feel like you were trying to like get the acceptance of your bonus daughter? I almost said her name. I don't know if you're keeping names out.
Yeah, I'm
But
keeping names out on mine.
um was that something that you like had to deal with, like trying to like make sure she liked you? And like do you feel like you ever parented her differently than your girls because of it?
So the first time, for sure, again, um, and like I said, I think that there's a lot to say that I wasn't given the opportunity to love her as
Yeah.
well. Like that was just not there the first go round. With my current bonus daughter, no, I think our relationship at some points is closer than my own.
Yeah.
Which again can come with its own hurts sometimes too.
Yeah.
We have her full time. So we get a lot of time together and it's awesome and it's fun, and we definitely have, I have a relationship with each of them so differently, and I
Mhm.
think that just goes for her as well. Her and my relationship um is awesome. Like I was given that opportunity to love and be there and just show up for her because my husband's awesome. I have a great, husband, and who is super supportive, and we share everything. So I think that that also goes with that blended family thing, is, I think a lot of people in general struggle to have conversations and open conversations,
Yeah.
and I find myself coaching and having conversations with a lot of my clients on how much they don't really talk to their spouses, and
Interesting.
and I share everything with my husband. Like he's my best friend. Like and that's something that was different from, again, like my previous marriage. Like we just are so open and honest, and he doesn't shame me when I am feeling triggered by my bonus daughter. We're able to talk
Yeah.
about it, and we're able to say, like, this is coming up for me. Or if I feel something triggered with me, even with my, like, the ones I've birthed, like with Daniel, like, I
Mhm.
can tell him and be like, this is the story I'm creating in my head. Like, are you really feeling this way about my kids, or is it totally just made up?
Yeah.
and we talk about it, because really that's what we do a lot of the time. Like we've heard it before, like our minds are our scariest place. It's
Yeah.
because we create these stories that like most of the time like aren't even true.
Well, and we don't talk about the stories.
And that's why I'm saying we need to, like that's why I'm saying
Yeah.
like I hear these spouses not communicating and not talking about it, because it when we're vulnerable, it creates room for hurt,
Yeah.
but it also creates room for opportunity and
Yeah.
connection. And that's what we have. And because we're able to have that, we're able to give our kids that in this house and in this space.
Yeah.
Did that answer your question?
Totally. Totally. And I think what I'm hearing is that you're really like, you've been given the space to actually love her and create a really beautiful relationship, and that comes from being able to communicate with your husband and choosing to communicate, maybe the harder conversations.
Right. And I
Well,
just
not
want to
maybe, but
say that,
definitely doing that.
yeah. And I just want to say that because we have that space here, we're able to work through it, but it's not, the other side is like not, I don't know how to talk about it, like how it is, how like
It's not the same.
yeah, the parent of my bonus daughter is not reciprocated. Like I
Yeah.
am very much like evil in her
Yeah.
eyes, which like
Yeah.
again, whatever, is all her own shit at the end of the day, honestly.
Yeah. Yep.
Because it is.
Because that
Because it
just
is. And like,
because.
yeah, it just is. And that's again a whole nother topic. But the point is because we are able to have such an open dialogue with my husband and I, we are able to communicate that efficiently ourselves by what's happening on the other parenting side, to do what is best for our daughter, not
Yeah.
ourselves or what's coming up for ourselves. And we're able
Yeah.
to like hold space for that, and hold space for her when that is coming up from the other side. And that's what's
Yeah.
important, is showing her that, like we're here in it, and, like not shaming the other parent when she comes to me and says like this happened and the other parent is saying this, like just sitting in it with her, and hey, what's coming up for you in that?
Yeah. Yeah.
You know what I mean? How are you being affected by that? Like, what do you need? And teaching her how to check in with that.
Yeah.
Not going like, "Oh, that was shitty of her to say that about me." Like that's not my place at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And I think too many times that's what we see and hear. It's like, how dare
Yeah.
she do that, or how dare they talk that way, or whatnot. Like, how about we like hear what's going on for them, because that's not easy. Hearing a
Yeah.
kid hearing people talk crap about the people they love.
Yeah. For sure. Something that I'm thinking about all of this is it basically seems like the takeaways or like the bottom line here is to work on yourself. If you're in a blended family and you're feeling like it's not what you want it to be, maybe you don't have the relationship with your stepkids or maybe even with the other parents the way that you do. I feel like the bottom line is to work on yourself and communicate like the hard stuff, the good stuff, like just leave the lines of communication open. Right? That's kind of I feel like you could summarize it
Yeah, there is,
very
I mean, at the end of the
broadly.
day, statistics show that there is a higher rate for divorce with blended families.
Yeah.
You got a lot going on. There's a lot coming at you. So, you might as well be prepared and do your due diligence to not have that happen, and not put
So
yourself or your kids in that position.
I have one more question
Yeah.
off that. What happens if your spouse is not um I guess open or available or willing to communicate openly? Like if you're doing this work and they're not, like what do you do?
I mean, you can't control what other people do, and unfortunately, we are either going to come at it and be like, "Hey, like I see some things that I'm doing, and I see some patterns that are happening in our relationship too, and I want to better myself for me and you and our kids." Like what does that look like for us? What can we do? I have some ideas. Can you come up with them too? I mean, again, it just depends on what each individual needs, which like
Yeah.
I could have thousands of different conversations to look like that. I'm just giving a base.
Yeah.
If you're not married yet, that's a different story. If you're with somebody and you will be blended, like you can have non-negotiables for yourself. And again, not to be controlling, it's for you. So for me, when I met my husband, a non-negotiable was we're going to be in therapy for at least a year.
Yeah.
And he didn't want to do it. He wanted to be with me, so he did it. And he was in therapy for a year, and it was like, gosh, it was probably like a year and a couple months, he came to me and said like, okay, I see that I need it too. And again,
Yeah.
I had done the work to find the good therapist already. So I think that really helped, was that we didn't have to go through a bunch. I already was like, hey, go to these people, pick the therapist. I think
Yeah.
this one would be great for you. Let me know. And I mean, he got lucky because again, I had already been going there for so long. So if you guys need my therapist and you're in Arizona, let me know. But you can have that conversation. Again, if you're already married and going through it, but you want to work on yourself, just start there and have the conversation with your spouse, like
Yeah.
again, like I said, hopefully she's going to be willing to work on themselves at the end of the day, and
Yeah.
that they want that too. It's a different conversation down the line if that doesn't happen. I mean, you get to choose whether or not that's the relationship you want to continue being in. Then, like, I can't make that decision for you, and it's not an easy one. um but you do get that choice. Like, it's the same with even friendships, and I think that that's what we need to look at. Is sometimes people are in our space for a season, and that can be a little bit trickier with marriages. Obviously, we're affecting a lot more people in lives, but I would hope you know the relationships that are important, we're both equally putting in
The effort.
what's needed. Yeah, the
Yeah.
effort to be done. Yeah, again, I
Yeah.
hope that makes sense.
Yeah, for
I would
sure.
I would
There's
hope that the spouses out there are just as much wanting to heal for themselves and their families. So,
yeah. Yeah, it's not a one size fits all answer,
yeah.
obviously. Like none of this is. It's just
Yeah,
I
again,
like
even if
asking these I like asking these questions just to be like a starting point, kind of like just to open your mind, and just not you, the listener, like just to be open and aware, and just start.
yeah, and I just want to say, like, abuse is different. Like, I
Yes.
just need to, like, disclaimer
Yes.
that, like, abuse is not like one that you need to communicate with them. Like, that's a non-negotiable. Married, not like, you should not be being verbally, spiritually, physically, mentally abused. End of
Yeah.
story.
Yep.
um yeah, and
Yeah.
because even in my first marriage, like, again, like, I didn't see the abuse. And again, it's a lot harder when you're in it. Like, it's easier to say, like, don't stay, but you don't know sometimes. um and I didn't know that I was,
Yeah.
so I stayed. And I mean, don't want to say never would have left, but it would have taken a lot longer.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah. I know emotional mental abuse is
Hmm.
so tricky. I didn't even know it was a thing
I know.
until years after I left well, and that was the other thing for me too. I didn't even leave the relationship. Like he
Well,
ended it.
that's what I'm saying. I didn't either.
Yeah.
He ended it too.
Yep.
Yeah.
And
So,
then you look back and you realize, wait a second,
oh yeah.
that was that was abuse. I am an abuse survivor. I
Yeah.
remember when I realized that, I was like, wow, that's a whole thing.
Yep. So, yep, that's that. Any other
Yeah.
questions about blended families?
I don't think so. I hope you guys took something from this. I just thought it would be you know, a new perspective we haven't had yet. And I definitely think, I feel like honestly, when you really think about life in general and like all the topics that we've talked about when we've talked about anything, Like it always comes down to working on yourself, honestly.
I know. I mean, again, like I clearly take that very seriously. That's what I do for
Yeah.
a living, is helping
Yeah.
people work on themselves. And it's not, again, like it just brings so much to your life being able to.
Yeah.
It's not to be like, oh, you need to work on yourself. I am saying we need to work on ourselves because it gives so
Well,
much when we do.
and something that I always say, it's not your fault that these things have happened to you, that the trauma that you have from your childhood and adolescence that are, I know for me that's where a lot of my core beliefs have stemmed from. I think most people
Yeah, 1 to
is where it is.
18 is
Yeah.
where most of our
And like you can't avoid that, like it just happens. But you can acknowledge it, and you can take the steps and accept responsibility for changing going forward, you know.
no, trauma is that's when I say like work on yourself, like why it's uplifting is tr- it's not the trauma itself, it's the stories we've created about ourselves from the trauma.
Yeah.
And that's why it's encouraging, is because that means that we have the capabilities to change it right now.
Yeah.
And that's what's empowering, is that we don't need to go and let the trauma take control of us. We actually get to do it now.
Yeah.
And that
Yeah.
gives us
It's
our
really
power
encouraging.
back. Yeah,
Hmm.
exactly.
Yep.
So, but yeah, so I appreciate all of you guys listening
Yeah. Me
on
too.
Hannah's podcast and mine for this episode.
This is fun. This was a good time.
It is. It's always a good time with my best friend
I
talking about
think
things. This is just like what we
you're
do.
recording it. Yeah.
I am recording it.
Yeah.
But this
I thought I was gonna have to get
no.
ready to end it, but you are.
No, I will. But yeah, no, it's always, this is like literally what we do. We even, like the other day we're talking about, like, remember I was like driving to school. I was like, we should have just been able to record this conversation. Like, because
Yeah.
we just like have conversations all the time that are like, this would be a great podcast for us. This would be a
That would
great
have
one.
been really good for someone else to listen to.
Yeah, exactly. So, but I always appreciate you. So thanks for
Yes,
chatting with me.
of course. I appreciate you too.
Yeah.
Good
All right.
times, good times.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye now. Thanks, friends, for listening in. If you found this helpful, please subscribe, share, and leave a review. If you'd like to be more involved in our community, hop over to Instagram and find me at Abigail Luvisi. Keep showing up. I will too. See you next time.